Siate media, right?
Sempre in mezzo.
Siate media.
So the meridiana, as we call it, is silent.
Okay.
So it just stops right here.
Yeah,
That's
because this is, so it's 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
That's 6 o'clock.
And that's
And
6.
this is 9 o'clock. This is 8 o'clock. Huh? In the morning. 8, 9,
Yeah, so it's
10,
11.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15 until 18. Because then the sun sets. Yeah.
You see the roof, Vinny?
This is Corciano. We are here. That's the town hall. This is the main square
Where we were, yeah.
with the gelateria and the bar.
Yeah.
And we came down the steps and we are here where the trees are.
Where's the coffee shop?
Right here.
Oh, right there. There you go. Now, yeah, there you go.
If you ever have a chance to come up and have a cafe in Corciano, continue to walk up on the main road because you come in this area that was the oldest little square next to the church. You can also have a look in the church because in the church there are two main paintings, one by the master of Raphael, il Perugino, and another one is a procession banner. So you just look inside and admire this beautiful artwork. They are original. You know, in the US they would be in a museum. We have them in the church. 500 years old by the master of Raphael. And then you keep, from the church, you keep going up here and you get to the very, very top of the village. And from here you can look down and you enjoy wonderful views. And then you come down from the other side. So, this we call rosso ammonitico because these are ammonites. Okay? Here,
Animals?
this.
Oh, shells.
Okay? These shells are residui, we say, what is left of the very, very, very geological times where here everything was underwater. So all Italy was underwater and the only mountains you could see were the Apennines. Then the civilization changed and went into marshland and then into the landscape you know today. So if you want to find ammonites while you are at the villa, you just go down, you cross the road, you go towards Migiana, and then on the left there is a children playground and there is this red box. And if you are very patient and you look carefully, you can find them. And what do you find? You find these kind of ammonites. This is our region. And this is where you can find the first settlements in prehistoric times where people lived, you know, these many thousand years ago. Vases, which are very special because they are made in the technique that we call impasto. So it was not the very advanced technique where you throw the sand, but it was very, very old. So this dates back to 3,000 years ago.
Wow.
See? So it's the 11th, 10th century before Christ. And these were funerary urns. So it was to burn ash, to bury ashes of the deceased. And there was a cover on top, and we call these vases from an era that we call of the Villanovian. Who were they? They were the ancestors of the Etruscans. So we will talk a lot about the Etruscans. You might have heard about them. They were the very smart people who, before the Romans started to expand, really brought the civilization in the center of Italy. They had a lot of contact with the Greek people who were the advanced civilization, and through that contact they brought advanced technique and technology into our region. The Etruscans in historic times lived in the center of Italy between the river Arno, that is the river of Florence, and the river Tiber. On the part that then, you know, stretches towards present Tuscany. And this we call Etruria Propria, and Corciano was part of Etruria. So the ancient people who lived here and made this area very advanced in ancient time were the Etruscans. there wasn't probably a village, because the main towns in ancient time, so when Etruscans started to develop here in this area in the 8th, 7th, 6th century before Christ, were Perugia, Cortona in Tuscany, and Chiusi. And as the valley was marshland, the ancient roads were on the hill slopes. And when people moved from cities to city, and it was very dangerous, when there was a water spring or a top of a hill, what did ancient people do? They constructed a sanctuary in order that you could go and pray. And then you would go on, reaching the next important town. So this was a very important place for people, going from one important town to the other. And there was an area that is San Mariano, one of the 8 historic hilltop towns of Corciano, where probably there was a prince who lived there and was in charge of the commerce of the area, because there was a very important road to the next town that was Chiusi. So what you see here is a chariot that belonged to the man that we call the Prince of Castel San Mariano. And these bronze fragments that are copies, because the originals are in the museum in Perugia, they were made by Greek bronze masters, and they were made for this very important rich prince of the Etruscan times. And they date back to the 6th century before Christ and are the ancient remains that were found digging in that area. And they were to decorate a chariot of the sposa. So when he got married, probably his bride would sit here and would come to him. And this was for him. He was the warrior, so he would stand here and show his armor and so on. Here you have photos of the different bronze remains that were found in this that they call the tomb of the Prince of Castel San Mariano, because when the Etruscans buried people, they buried them with their belongings. It was a status symbol, and he was a very powerful man. But unfortunately, these remains are dispersed. So some are in Germany, in Munich, some are in Perugia, some are in New York in a museum. So they are really dispersed because they were found in the 19th century. The laws to protect archaeological remains were bucchero, and it's only the Etruscans who fired this kind of ceramic. It's just clay that is fired 3 times, and that becomes black inside and outside. We call it the silverware of the poor people, because if you could not buy silver pots, you would buy yourself a bucchero vase or pot. To see a sarcophagus that dates back to the 5th, 4th century. So the Etruscans have different culture, and they either buried the ashes or sometimes they buried the whole deceased. These are offerings that were found very close where there was an Etruscan temple. And you can also understand which kind of gods were worshipped there, because if you look the display behind, you have an arm and a hand and you have a foot. So it was a sanctuary where you went to pray for your health. You had a problem, you had a broken arm, very big problem in ancient times. You would go to the god and say, I give you a bronze arm, please fix my arm. Because this was the relationship with the gods in ancient time. It was, I give you something, you give me something back. So where were these, and then you had another sanctuary where the farmers went in order to pray for the healthy condition of their animals, because they were farmers probably, and these are women who prayed because they wanted to have babies. So this is the sanctuary that is not far away from here, where there was very, very important water springs. And then the sanctuary disappeared, but excavating they found all this stuff, and now today you find in the same area a church dedicated to Saint Anne, who is the mother of the Virgin Mary. It has to do with fertility and health and so on. It's the same function, but of course religion changes, and so you have to change the way you worship in the sanctuary. And you come here and you learn how the Etruscans used to write. They started to write in the 6th century before Christ, when they came in contact with the Greek people, and they adopted the Greek alphabet. But they did not write from left to right, but from right to left. And this is the transcription of what you see here. And you understand here that in very ancient time there was already this line. So they started to write very big, and then they had to write smaller. Okay? And this, what is this? Here you read P-E-F-N-S Kalusnal. He was a god. He was a god of the undergrounds. And here there was a statue of him. But the statue has disappeared because bronze was very good. You can melt it and use it to make the weapons. So the statue has gone, but the inscription is still here. And there is a nice story. This stone was in the wine cellar of a farmer. And then somebody who knew about, Etruscans went there and started to read the inscription and said, "Oh, you are crazy. This is a very important stone." And so it was moved into the museum. But it was used just to put on top a wine flask. Yeah. Here, it's on a main road to Chiusi, the other important town in Tuscany that is Etruscan, and along that main road there is a roundabout today, and they wanted to construct a supermarket. They started to dig, and one hole, the other hole, what is happening? Etruscan tombs. They stopped everything, and the poor guy had a big problem because he wanted to have a new supermarket, bigger built. And he understood, oh, my business is over now. But no, because the municipality found a compromise, and they gave him the possibility to build on top of this area after the archaeologists had, checked all the tombs, the supermarket. So you can go there, buy your grocery, they give you a key, you go underground and you can visit the tombs. So the top is, the grass. What did the Etruscans do? They dug, they created a corridor, and then they created a room with these benches to put these stone boxes that are funerary urns. So every stone box is an urn where there was the ashes of the deceased that was put in a fabric and put inside, and on the top, if you come here, you can read there is an inscription. This is the name of the deceased. Over there, for example. So the ones who had a little bit more money paid somebody to put the name of the deceased. Usually it was the name, the family name, the name of the father, and the name of the mother. Because women in the Etruscan society played a very important role. They could inherit, they could run a business, and they could give the name to their children, above all if they came from a wealthy family. So the situation, the condition, the social condition of Etruscan women was freer and more important than in the Greek culture or in the Roman culture. What happened here was, there was a travertine door that would open, and when somebody of the family died, they would come underground and bring the funerary urn inside with the belongings of the deceased. But these are very simple. These people were not very rich. No. The rich people had different urns. This is the many, many tombs that were found on top of which the supermarket was built. Somebody died. They went into the workshop of an artisan and they chose the funerary urn that they could pay, of course, for and that they liked most. So they were standard, and then you could also ask to put the name of the deceased on the top. Here you have Medusa, for example, that is very much represented. Or you have the flower, or you have this beautiful decoration. So these are all funerary urns which go back to the 2nd, 1st century before Christ, until the 1st century after Christ. How long did the Etruscans last? More or less 1,000 years. They developed in the 10th century before Christ as Villanovians, and they developed until the Romans completely absorbed them. and they were absorbed by the Romans in the 1st century before Christ. And then Etruscan was stopped to be written, and the Etruscan language was no longer spoken, and the Etruscans, were just a memory and history. Beautiful Etruscan urn. You have to have it. And this is very moving. I hope you are not going to cry, because each time I tell the story of this urn, I start to cry. This is very moving. So, on the top you have a man. So the deceased is a man. And his name is Aule, Ane, Markna, and so on. So that's Aule is his name, Ane is the family name, Ane Markna, and then you have the name of the father. So he died, and he's saying goodbye to his wife.
Oh.
And if you look at their faces, they are crying.
Oh.
It's tears. It's black tears. And that's very rare. Because the tears, when they are black in ancient time, probably it's the moment in which it's forever. And they were very rich, because he was probably a soldier, and he had a servant. This is his shield. And she was a very, very rich lady, and she is her servant, and she's carrying a beauty case of hers. And the Etruscan women were very elegant, were ornate and were beautiful. And the colors here are very, very precious. You see, it's red, it's black, it's a little bit of the blue at the background. So we call this urn la tomba degli sposi, l'addio degli sposi, o l'urna dell'addio. So they are saying goodbye to each other forever. And then you have other beautiful carvings. You have Scilla, you have the 7 against Thebes, and you have again in rubricato, in red colors,
Is this authentic?
This is
colors?
authentic. So you have to think that ancient world was very colorful. Now the colors have fainted, because when you open a tomb, this is what the tomb looked like when they found it. When you open it, the oxygen in a very short time, dissolves the colors. They are still preserved, because in modern times there is a technique, and you have a spray that you can put on the colors and you preserve them. So you preserve them, and then they are restored, and this is why you see these urns are colorful and the other not, because they were found earlier when this technique was not available. But the ancient world was full of colors and very kitsch.
So they just carved out the stone and made a space for the urn?
Yes. If you open the cover, you have inside a space.
Yeah.
Yes.
Carved out a box. so,
Yeah. We're very rich. The place where the deceased was put before they would cremate the body. Okay? And so beautiful. This is authentic. This is original. This is the head of question mark. Is it a goose or is it a swan? If it's a swan, it is very, very significant, because the sun, when the swan sang, it was the last song, and it was the sign of eternity. And here you have a donkey. Did you see how beautiful? So wonderful, because the Etruscan people knew how to work with bronze and create the most beautiful statues and sculptures. Why do we have so many tombs in our area? Because not far from here there was a village, and what did these people do for living in that village? They were active in a quarry where there was travertine that was used to build the city walls in Perugia and also the Etruscan arts. So most of them were artisans that then became merchants, and they were not the richest people among the Etruscans, but they were wealthy. And you can tell from the different urns that you can see here. And then you have on every urn myth, you say in English, that comes from Greek culture. So this is the sacrifice of Iphigenia of Tauris, and then you have the tomb markers. And according to archaeologists, this is evidently a tomb where men were buried, and women is more a sphere.
Okay.
And tombs where only the women of a family were married, and tombs where only the men of a family were married. If you go to the Archaeological Museum in Perugia, there is the tomb of the Kai Kutu, very important family, between the 3rd century before Christ and the 1st after Christ, so in the moment of transition, of Romanization. And there are 50 and more urns where only the men are buried. And we don't know where the women of this family were buried, so perhaps they will build a new building and they will find. And why? The archaeologists do not know why. But it's like that. Once upon a time was a convent where nuns used to reside. They were from the order of the Augustinians, but then they were a little bit too loose and too free. So what they did was they moved the nuns to Perugia. They used the stones of this monastery to refurbish the other one, and this became underground. When they decided to create this museum, they started to excavate, and they found this part again, and then they learned that the monastery of which there were documents was here. So it was forgotten for many centuries, and then it was rediscovered when they started to create this Antiquarium.
There's no wall over on this side, or?
No, because this was the rock. You saw that there is the rock over there?
Oh, this is like the wall?
Yeah, so this is the wall outside, because
The outer
we are
wall,
on
the
the
outer-
slope.
the outer
Yeah,
ring?
the outer. No. This was the wall of a monastery. Monastery? Monastery. This is so difficult. I will never get it. Can you tell me the pronunciation?
Monastery?
Monastery, yeah.
Monastery.
But however you say it is
Monastery.
perfect.
You understand? Yeah, importante che mi capite. These are the original lions, 1 and 2, one without head and one with head, that you saw as a copy when you came down from the bar.
Yeah.
Huh?
I saw that.
So these are copies that were created with a digital technology, I don't know, and these are the original. And they are very important, and in the 14th century, there is a story that was written in a document, dating back to the 14th century, that explains you why one of the two lions is without head. Yes, it is a very scary story. So, are you afraid of scorpions? There was a child in Corciano in the 1300s who was afraid of scorpions. And he was afraid of the lions, and he didn't want to touch the lion because he was afraid to put his hand in the mouth of the lion. And the father said, "You are a boy, you cannot be scared. You just put your hand in the mouth and you will see that nothing happens to you, and then you will not be scared." And so the child very timidly put his hand in the mouth of the lion,
The headless one.
and there was a scorpion, and a poisonous one. So the child died, and the father was in despair and so upset with the lion that he cut his head. So it's not true, of course, but if you think that this story was told in the 14th century, this means that the lions were very, very important for the town much before. So some archaeologists think that they are ancient, and they come from ancient time, and they belong to the sun.